Hey all, Dan asked for more details about the strop, what I'm doing when I'm sharpening knives. And I didn't really talk about it much. I mentioned it. Dan also asked about what liquid I was putting on the Japanese water stones I was using to sharpen my knives. And the short answer is it was water, albeit with a very small drop of Dawn dishwashing liquid in it. Kind of keeps my ability to rinse away the paste that the expended metal becomes away easier. So that's what I use. So water, a little bit of dishwashing liquid, and it works quite well with water stones. But let's talk about the strop, or I think more appropriately, why I strop. When you're sharpening, you are taking a steel blade and you are using a stone to make that blade conform to the stone. Same thing with a sharpening belt or any other system. Like I am bending that steel to the will of the sharpening implement. When you strop, it's just the opposite. You are using that stropping medium to conform to the steel, and then you're polishing out any imperfections. So while you could say that you're removing material with a strop, the amount that you're removing is so minuscule that I really think of it as polishing more than removing. You can use a strop as a final finishing touch after you have sharpened a knife, or you can use a strop to bring back an edge if you have not beaten it up too badly. Like if I've just done some really basic cutting and I don't have a really fine edge on a knife, I can run a knife on a strop several times, and usually, depending on the steel, that will bring it right back to that same original or darn close to it fine edge. I will demonstrate, I'll actually show you how I do it with a kind of an overhead view of me actually running a strop. Now, a strop is not needed. It is not a necessary step. It is, like I said, it can be used as a finishing step or it can be used as a touch-up. I will tell you that for many years, I never bothered to strop. But more and more, I've kind of come back to it because it's a minimum of effort. Like I don't have to break out a sharpening system or worry about angle guides or anything like that. I can just pull out the strop, run my knife on it a few times, and get a pretty darn acceptable result for that amount of effort. So let's move on to actually working with the strop so I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, guys, what you see in front of you is a strop, and it's one that I purchased on Amazon. This one's a Beaver Craft. I'll link to this one in the description. I've linked to it before. And it comes with a little bar of polishing compound. When you first get this strop, you're going to have a plain edge like that, or a plain surface. There's going to be nothing on it except for the grit that I seem to have put on mine. So you're going to need to use that compound or a similar compound and rub it onto that surface. And there's a very, very mild abrasive in here, guys, but it is mild. I mean, it is very, very gentle. And then once you have your strop set up and you've got some compound on it, you're going to take your knife. So in this case, I've got a zero tolerance 0560. It's a nice knife. This is not a cheap knife. I don't think you get it anymore. Interesting thing, this one's made out of Elmax, is the blade steel, which I'll talk about more in another video. And it is not a cheap steel, but interestingly, I don't find it to be any better edge holding than, say, S30, S35, or S45 VN, any of those. But I digress. Anyway, so whether you want to touch it up or you want to do a finishing touch after you've done a sharpening, what you want to do is drag the knife edge kind of away. I don't want to drag into it because I'm just going to end up cutting the leather. I want to just drag the edge away from it, and I want to hit every single bit of the edge all the way down, and then I'll do the other side. And you really don't have to limit how many times you do this. You can, do it 4 or 5 times, or you can do it a bunch more. Like I said, it's not really gonna, if the knife is completely banged up, guys, this is not gonna sharpen a knife. It's really not. This is like, it's a little bit in need of some help. This will do it. Now, one thing you can do if you're like, man, I don't know if I'm getting the proper angle. Am I really getting the sharpened bevel, or am I getting something different? You can take a Sharpie and you can draw on the actual sharpened bevel itself. Actually, let me clean off that bevel because I'm sure it's got some compound on it. So if I take this and my Sharpie. Oh, how am I going to do this on camera without being a total dude? Let's see. Okay, so just draw on the sharpened bevel itself, like so. So then go back to the strop. And by the way, this works for sharpening stones as well. If you're having a hard time trying to find the angle, and then when you run it a couple times on your strop, if you come back and there's any Sharpie on the blade, you know you're not hitting the proper angle. But as you can see, or I don't know if you can, but that just took all the Sharpie off. So I know I'm working the correct angle. It helps a little bit of practice. Once you've done that a few times, you probably won't need to do it. But if you're ever in any doubt about getting the proper angle on any sharpening at all, the Sharpie trick works wonders. And so, like I said, you just run it back and forth, both sides. When I'm done, I'll usually clean it off with a paper towel just to get, because you're going to get some of that compound kind of just floating around on the edge and on the various bevels of the knife. So paper towel, take those off. I just usually, I don't know if you can see it, but I just run the edge away on a paper towel. Interestingly enough, paper towels are very, very mildly abrasive themselves. So I've never tried to sharpen a knife on a paper towel, but I'm betting you might be able to. Actually, it'd probably take a long time. And yeah, see, I don't know if you can see that, but it's taking hair. So it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to do that. So that's the basics for stropping. Like I said, if you've got a very, very beat up knife, this isn't going to help you. Like, you're going to need stones or a belt or something really abrasive. But for a finishing touch on an edge that's already pretty darn good, the strop is really, really fairly easy, fairly cheap, and not hard to do. So that's my general thoughts on the strop. Okay, guys, I'm going to finish this up here. I don't want this video to become too long. Stropping isn't that hard. Do remember the Sharpie trick. Do remember that if you strop a lot, you're going to have to occasionally refresh that compound on the surface you're using as a strop. One of those bars is going to last you a long time, though, like probably years and years, unless you are stropping a lot of knives every day. I don't think that's going to be a big issue for you. I really like stropping. A good friend of mine kind of reminded me that was a thing. He was working on one of his knives, and I had a knife in my pocket, and it was pretty sharp. And I said, "Hey, do you want to do that to mine?" And with a few passes, he handed it back to me, and that edge came back extra sharp. I was super impressed, and I realized, well, maybe it's time for me to spend the whopping $15 to go buy my own strop. That Beaver Craft one that I use, available on Amazon, I think that's USA made, so you're actually supporting an American business, so that doesn't hurt either. Anyway, guys, I think this is going to be the last sharpening one I do for a little while. Every sharpening system has its own quirks and vagaries. I will tell you in general, if you're picking up a new sharpening system, especially if you don't have a lot of experience sharpening knives, get a cheap knife that you're not really worried if it gets banged up, and experiment with that some. Even one of those $12 or $20 knives that I showed you in some of my previous videos, you can put a good edge on those knives. You know, it won't hold it forever and ever, but if you can get an edge on one of those, you can get an edge on pretty much anything. And so that's really a good way to experiment without, experimenting on a $100, $200, $300 knife. I would hate for you to bang up something that was a really nice knife when you could just use a $20 Chinese knockoff, really perfect your craft on that one, and then move forward with some higher end knives, something that is in your collection you care about. My next videos, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about knife steels. That one's going to be in depth. But anyway, if you have any questions about sharpening, or there's anything I missed or didn't cover, let me know in the comments. As always, guys, liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends really helps out. Appreciate that. Kind of stuck on a hiatus here, so I'm hoping to help my subscriber base a little bit. It might help to do a giveaway or something. I don't know. Let me know. Anyways, guys, take care. Stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.